We have tons of NHL news and rumors to take a look at here in today's video. Today's rumor mill focusing on teams like the Montreal Canadiens, Boston Bruins, San Jose Sharks, Vancouver Canucks, Buffalo Sabres, and the Utah Hockey Club. Plus, we get an announcement today from the IIHF regarding Russia and Belarus's participation in international hockey for 25-26. We have another player on waivers today. We're going to discuss a little further on the fallout for the Ryan Hartman 10-game suspension and several injury updates that could be very impactful to various teams around the NHL. Including Quinn Hughes, Mitch Marner, Muriel, Heiskanen, Matthew Barzal, and a few others. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss in today's video. Let's first get started with a quick update from another player on waivers today. We have another waiver activity. It's been busy in the last 7 to 10 days. Today, the Nashville Predators have forward Vinny Hinostroza on waivers to go back to the American Hockey League. He was recently recalled. Is actually the AHL leading scorer down there. So I do wonder if there's a possibility Hinostroza could get picked up. He has a decent amount of NHL games under his belt from previous opportunities. Had an assist in last night's loss to the Ottawa Senators, so he was certainly noticeable out there. And like I said, he's having a phenomenal American Hockey League season. So, kind of like we've seen like Adam Gaudette be the top goal scorer last year in the AHL, obviously get an NHL opportunity this year with Ottawa and has 16 goals. I wonder if, Hinostroza could end up getting onto just going to get on the right team, the right opportunity. So we'll find out tomorrow afternoon if he'll be picked up or if he'll head back to their AHL affiliate. As I mentioned, of course, we found out late last night, I think it was around 9 or 10 o'clock Eastern time when the announcement came down that wild forward Ryan Hartman has been facing a 10-game suspension. We knew it was likely going to be more than 5. We knew they were going to be coming down hard on him for the deliberate intent to injure on Sens forward Tim Stützle. He was given a match penalty, which is an automatic review. We knew they'd already said it was going to be in person, or at least in person was going to be offered. So we knew with his history being a repeat offender, it was going to be, it's going to be substantial, and they certainly lived up to that. So 10 games is what Hartman gets. In the video I did last night talking about it, I did an early calculation. I was off a little bit for how much money he was going to lose. I said I thought it was going to be around $600K. It's actually closer to $500K, just a little shy of actually. So my math was a little bit off that way. But at the end of the day, like I said, he's been previously suspended 4 times, previously fined 7 times. There was also some interactions in this game, which certainly made it retaliatory in nature. So I totally am fine with the suspension here because of the significant amount. It is possible, and you might even say likely, it's hard to say, if he'll have an opportunity to appeal. It's the longest suspension we've seen since Tom Wilson got 20 games back 7 years ago. He did appeal, and it ended up getting knocked down to 14. Even if the games go by, depending on how long things take, you might not be able to get the games back, but you can get money back, which is obviously, we're talking about a substantial amount of money. And a player like Ryan Hartman, he's been paid well, but it's not like he's been making Connor McDavid money for several years or anything like that. So this is, to him, probably more money than some players for sure. So he's got 48 hours from the time the suspension was announced to appeal. He would appeal directly to Gary Bettman. If Bettman does not change anything, he can then take it to an independent arbitrator. So we'll find out what the decision is here, most likely by tomorrow evening, to go from there. Now, as we mentioned, several roster moves, injury updates around the NHL. A lot of players are dinged up or coming back, and it's going to impact teams either negatively or positively in some cases. The Buffalo Sabres are going to be without Tage Thompson tonight and Mattias Samuelsson. Both are listed as day-to-day. Of course, as we know, we had in the last game, Thompson got a bad hit from Stefan Nason. I'm surprised he didn't get a call from player safety. Goes to show the inconsistency, in my opinion, with how things are handled. But they did have a team meeting, the Sabres did, to discuss the lack of response. The other 4 guys on the ice did absolutely nothing, and in my opinion, should be a little bit, embarrassed that they didn't do anything to protect or stand up for their teammate. So they had a team meeting. Alex Tuch, Dylan Cousins both talked to the media afterwards. They both say it's never going to happen again, and that there was guys on the bench that wished they were on the ice, that they could have done something. Especially after just a few days after they honored Rob Ray, who was obviously an enforcer and that was one of the main things you knew Rob Ray stood for, was protecting his teammates and kind of dragging his team into the fight and looking after them. And, the team doesn't have anybody like that right now. So clearly that's an issue. I mean, it's one thing to be out of the playoffs, but at least play for each other and stand up for each other. Hopefully we'll see a bit more of a different version of the Sabres. We'll see what happens here. They are playing tonight. Be curious to see if we'll see a different type of team or not, or what have you. The St. Louis Blues are getting back Nick Leddy, who's been out for 49 games. He was the third or fourth game of the year. He suffered a serious injury. He's been out, so he's back for St. Louis. So that's good news for them. In Minnesota, they've activated Jonas Brodin from long-term injury reserve. So that's a nice bonus. Brodin's certainly one of the better defensive defensemen in the NHL. And Marcus Johansson as well is coming back from injury reserve. So they had to return Ben Jones back to the AHL. Quick update on Matthew Barzal in New York. The Islanders' top offensive player is possibly done for the season. Now, the Islanders are not saying that, but based on what we're hearing, it sounds like the knee injury is pretty serious. I've heard some think it could be a broken kneecap after blocking a shot. So, it doesn't sound good for Barzal. And for the Islanders having any hope of making a run to try to get in the playoffs, without him, it's going to be that much tougher. So that's certainly a big blow for sure. For Barzal, a guy who was, definitely probably on Team Canada's radar if there's any injury replacements coming up. Fortunately, will not be in a position to be able to go. Rangers' Adam Enstrom is going to be out long-term as well. He's looking at a 2 to 3 month recovery on a lower body injury, so bad news on that front. The Blue Jackets, of course, who lost Marchenko with the broken jaw. We know he's going to be out for at least a month. We're hearing some say it could be closer to 2. Regardless, it's a big blow in a time when they're in a playoff mix and trying to hold down a playoff spot. It's going to be challenging for them. And now Zach Werenski is also out tonight, and there's some questioning whether or not it could last longer than that, so we'll see. But Werenski having a phenomenal season, so you lose arguably one of your most productive or top scoring forwards, and then your top defense who produces a lot of offense for you as well. It's going to be tough for the Blue Jackets here for sure. Utah's getting a nice return in Dylan Gunter, who missed 12 games with injury. Of course, he was having a phenomenal season. The surprise, though, is to make room in the lineup, Lawson Crouse is coming out, but as a healthy scratch. Lawson Crouse has been a pretty good player for Utah, for the Coyotes, for a number of years, so it's a little surprising to see. I wonder, with all the young talent they have there, if that could lead to anything more. Probably not, but it's something worth monitoring in the short term here. We did finally get an update on the Dallas Stars, and their top defenseman, Muriel Heiskanen, who we knew was out of the Four Nation tournament for Finland. He did have knee surgery, and he's considered month to month. Now, looking at the calendar, there's just over 2 months of NHL hockey left. Month to month means that it's probably going to be right around 2 months, maybe a little more. It'd be reevaluated after 1, but it might not be 2. So, that's going to be another situation to watch. The Stars already made a big trade. Getting Granlund and CC, they have the Tyler Seguin money on LTIR. Now it's possible, if things are looking like he may not be back, and I would suspect that there's a good chance he won't be, they could really stockpile the LTIR money even further and add again. So we'll see what Dallas does, but this injury, obviously it sucks. It's bad news for him. They're one of the top players. But when it comes to stocking up for the playoffs, it might have a positive outlook. So we'll see. In Toronto, they may be without Mitch Marner, might miss his first game of the season. He's missed a few recent practices and skates, and there's some concern that he's going to be out tonight. He's considered a game-time decision. Craig Berube and the staff there being pretty quiet on what exactly he's dealing with. All Berube said was that something happened. I think it was in the Oilers game, and that he's just not feeling quite right with some part of his body. So we don't really know anything, so we'll see where that goes. And the Canucks, unfortunately, going to be without Captain Quinn Hughes again tonight. Rick Tocchet did confirm he was out, and it sounds like it could be more than that. He may end up missing a few more games into the week here, which you would have to think might put his participation at the Four Nations tournament possibly in jeopardy too. So that'll be another situation to watch for Team USA. Now, as I mentioned, we got an update today from the IIHF announcing that Russia and Belarus, who have not been able to participate in international hockey, they are not going to be reinstated for the 25-26 season amid security concerns that continue to persist. So there'll be no change from the Ice Hockey Federation for allowing those two countries to participate in international tournaments. I would suspect that that's probably going to include the Olympics. I mean, it still seems far enough away that if things, can change, that maybe there's an exception. I'm not sure, but it certainly puts that in big time jeopardy. That's just not going to seem the same having an Olympic tournament without the Russians being there. I know, regardless of what we think politically or anything, I'm not trying to bring that into it. It just feels like it's not truly best on best without some of the best athletes being there. So it's just unfortunate because I'd like to see them be able to play, but I understand their decision. A couple of things we've seen here recently in the last couple of days amidst the, not to drag politics in this again, but the anthems. Canadian anthem was booed briefly in Nashville last night. We've seen the American anthem booed at, I think, at least 3 Canadian arenas in the last few days as well, amidst the after President Trump announced the tariffs against Canada. Obviously, Canadian fans not too happy with that, booed the American anthem, and we've seen it. It didn't, although last night's one in Nashville, it was Nashville and Ottawa. It only lasted the first few seconds, and then the booing kind of stopped. And at the end, they gave it a big cheer. So personally, I'm not a fan of this at all. Regardless of your thoughts of a political standpoint, whether you think the tariffs are good, bad, or indifferent, whether you want to see a trade war between two countries that have been such good allies and friends for eons and decades and centuries, you really don't want that, So, but regardless of what your thoughts are on it, these two countries, Canada and US, we've been very good friends, very good allies for a long time. It almost feels like it's kind of like one big country, but it's not. Obviously, there is big differences between the two, but at the same time, it's really not. I hate to see any kind of booing because to me, it's not fair to the anthem singers. You don't want any of them to take anything personally, for one. Secondly, all the teams have players from both Canada and the States. I don't want any players to feel offended. It just, to me, it's not a political area. I just, if you're American and you think the Canadian government's not doing a good job or holding up their end of the bargain, that's fine. If you're Canadian and you don't like what President Trump has wanted to move forward with, I understand that. That's fine too. But let's leave that in a different arena and not necessarily boo the anthems, because to me it's a lot more than that. You think of the military, like, to protect their countries. You think of all the people that have done all these things for us over the years. It's just, to me, it's not right. Same thing. I would never do anything to a flag either. It doesn't matter how angry I might get at the U.S. for a decision they made. I would never desecrate their flag. That's just so disrespectful. So I hope the booing stops, to be honest. It's something that I was shocked to see happen. And I hope it comes to a close. It probably is going to add a little spice to the Four Nation tournament coming up. Right now, all the tariffs between Canada and the States are all on pause. Right now, they seem to have found some common ground, at least on a temporary basis. So hopefully it doesn't continue to be a thing moving forward. It just, I don't know, just doesn't belong there. Just seems wrong, in my opinion. Now, on the trade front, lots of speculation about further trades we might see leading into the deadline. Of course, with the Four Nation break coming up, we've only got another week or so here, then we've got a Four Nation break, and then there's only a couple of weeks of hockey when we come back from that before the trade deadline. So one thing we want to take a look at is what is likely going to transpire here. Now, some of the we got a variety of sources here. Dave Pagnotta, the fourthperiod.com, had a big update today as well. One team he's telling us to watch, not only at the deadline, but going into the offseason, is Utah. Now, he says the Utah Hockey Club are a team that certainly wants to continue to add big pieces and spend, and they're trying to make big additions to make this team that much better for 25-26, and they could start by having some groundwork laid for discussions before the deadline. So if they're going to make deals at the deadline, they're a team that's unfortunately not trending towards being a playoff team. So if anything, they're not going to be picking up a rental, but it doesn't mean they can't be involved in a lot of conversations around, hockey trade, getting a player with a term that fits their their team, what they're looking to build there. So we saw them be very active at the NHL draft last summer. I would suspect that they could be active, and even if they don't do much in the way of activity around the deadline, you can expect that they're probably going to be having a lot of conversations, like I said, which will lay the groundwork for some of those deals that we see future and end up in the summer. We hear all the time. A general manager will say that the deal goes out at the deadline or at the draft, for example, and be like, "Oh yeah, we've been talking about this for months. We started at the trade deadline. Didn't make sense to complete it at the time, so we revisit it in the summer, and here we are." So look for Utah to do that. And he says that they, as serious as they are for big game hunting and kind of adding that big piece, if players that are looking like they could be UFAs on July 1st make it there, like Mikko Rantanen, if Carolina doesn't sign him, if the Leafs don't sign Mitch Marner, expect Utah to be in there with their pocketbook wide open, ready to spend to try to bring a big star to that new team. So we'll see what happens. Now, Dave Pagnotta also touched on Dylan Cousins as well as Pierre LeBrun on the Insider Trading on TSN today. Of course, they both make mention that the Sabres are not out there shopping Dylan Cousins, but the Sabres find him in the unfortunate circumstance again to be in last place in the Eastern Conference. They're getting tons of calls, and Cousins is one of the main players that is getting attention along with one or two of their defensemen. I mean, Cousins, 23 years old. He's a right shot center. Might not be having a phenomenal season now, but we've seen in the past what looks to be there for talent. He's got right now the contract he has might not seem great, but if he can get back to playing like he was when he signed it, it would be a pretty good deal. To me, he has the potential, I think, to be a 30 goal scoring centerman who can give you, probably at least 70 points. So I think over time, especially as the cap rises, that contract still has time to age well. But I wonder if he needs a new start or what have you. So I know Pierre LeBrun has mentioned that the Calgary Flames are very, very interested in this player. And even though they've added Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost, that he's very interesting to them and a player that they're closely monitoring. The big issue, though, is that the Calgary Flames may not have what Buffalo's going to want. The Sabres at this point, they don't want futures. If they're going to move a player of the magnitude of Cousins or Owen Power, Bowen Byram, or any of these guys that are getting some speculation around them, then they want a hockey trade. They want a player that's going to come in and help them right away, because they can't dilly-dally here and try to, wait and get a pick that's for a year down the road and be 3 years before they have an impact. They are far enough into this drought of being out of the playoffs that they don't have time to waste. So they are certainly looking for a hockey trade if they make that kind of deal. The Flames may not have the pieces to land them, even though they are extremely interested. So we'll see. Another team to watch in that front, according to Pagnotta as well, is Chicago. So they might have a little bit more of what they're looking for than Calgary is, but we'll see. In Montreal, Arpon Basu has made mention of a couple of things that Habs could do. We know that the Habs right now kind of falling back out of the playoff hunt here. They're in a must-win situation, in my opinion, in San Jose tonight. I don't know that they can get back in the race, but you never know. You get on a big enough heater, anything's possible. But at this point, it's looking more and more likely that they're probably going to have to make a big decision here on some of these pending UFAs, and that selling is more likely now that they've fallen back. And he suggests that, and this is just a suggestion on his part, to trade guys like Yoel Armia and Jake Evans together. Because we've heard before that Armia and Dvorak, there just wasn't like a lot of interest, and moving those guys was quite challenging, which is why they're still with the team. But Armia and Evans are both penalty killers. They both play bottom 6 minutes, and Armia actually hasn't had a bad season when it comes to what you're, if you look at what he could do. And like on a contending team, if he's a fourth liner killing penalties and, playing a defensive role, that he could possibly thrive in that. And these are players that could jump into a team's bottom six that are already used to playing together. Now, I don't know sure if adding them together would really necessarily increase the value. It's hard to say. But anyways, he's suggesting that it might be a package deal for teams to consider both guys, which does make some sense. Just depending on what Montreal wants for both guys might make that really that much more challenging for them to pull off, but it's not a bad idea for any means. So we'll see. Montreal, like I said, the big things: Evans, Armia, Dvorak, definitely names. Josh Anderson's name apparently is out there a little bit too, but I don't know that that's going to happen. I think that there's still too much on that contract for teams to really take him off their hands. Now, in Boston, apparently, according to Pagnotta, that there has been some conversations earlier on. There was with Justin Brazeau, but talks have been very quiet. Crickets on a contract extension, so he's available right now. So we'll see where that leads. I mean, he's a big body. Of course, Boston at this point is trying to get back into making the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, that's considering the value of Brazeau, I would suspect they'll probably keep him as their own rental, but another situation on a player, if they fall back enough here, they have a tough schedule, in my opinion. So if the Bruins look like they may not be out of it, or might be out of it, Brazeau might be a guy to go and add some depth and some size and a little bit of secondary scoring ability on a team going in. San Jose does have Mario Ferrero available. According to Pagnotta, the Avalanche are a team that's heavily interested. There are other teams linked to Ferrero as well, but he's definitely out there and on the open market as a tradable player. And speaking of defensemen, the Vancouver Canucks, after acquiring Marcus Pettersson, and have, of course, had Elias Pettersson, the defenseman, the young prospect D, both been up. So now that they have both those guys in the lineup, it's made the left side of their D a little bit better. They've been happy with the play of the young Pettersson so far. And, of course, Marcus Pettersson just come in, who they intend to extend long term, which has kind of put Carson Soucy on the outside looking in. He's been a healthy scratch, and it's believed that he is available for trade and will be a player that's currently available right now. So he could be a guy that we see moved here in the short term. So he's got another year left at $3.25 million. So it looks like the Canucks might be looking to move Soucy. I know at one point the Soucy Myers pair was something that they weren't thrilled with. And like I said, with the other upgrades they've made, obviously with Quinn Hughes being the top left-hand D, you throw in Pettersson, and now the lefty side of the D looks a lot different and made Soucy available. So it's hard to say how teams feel about his contract, but he's big body, 6'5", got a fair bit of experience, including a little bit in the playoffs. So we'll see if teams come calling on Vancouver. He's definitely a name to watch that could be moved. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.